The final countdown. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. The faint, rhythmic beep of the heart monitor was the only sound keeping time in that cold, sterile hospital room. Outside the window, a gray drizzle washed over the city, blurring the streetlights into smudges of yellow and red. Inside, the air smelled of bleach, cold tea, and finality. Dr. Reynolds stood at the foot of my bed. He didn't look me in the eye at first. He kept his gaze fixed on the clipboard in his hands, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses with a slow, deliberate thumb. When a doctor avoids your eyes, you already know what he is going to say. You don't need a medical degree to read the posture of a man carrying terrible news. "Alina," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry. The toxins in your system have caused irreversible organ failure. The aggressive treatment isn't taking, based on your current vitals. We are looking at 72 hours, 3 days, maximum." 3 days. The words hung in the air like smoke. My chest tightened, not from physical pain, but from the sheer weight of hearing my life reduced to a long weekend. 72 hours. 72 hours to say goodbye to 32 years of memories, to hard work, to dreams I'd put off for someday. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the tears to come. I waited for the panic, the desperation, the urge to scream at the ceiling and ask why. But when I opened my eyes and looked past the doctor, I didn't see grief. I saw my younger sister, Sarah. She was standing by the window, framed by the gray light. Her hand was resting on her waist, and her left index finger was gently tapping against her thumb. 1. She paused, moved to the next finger and tapped again. 2. 3. She wasn't crying. Her shoulders weren't shaking. Her breath wasn't ragged. In the reflection of the rain-streaked windowpane, I saw her face clearly. Her mouth was set in a tight, suppressed line not of sorrow, but of intense, calculated focus. She was literally counting down the days on her fingers. When she realized Dr. Reynolds was turning around, the expression vanished instantly. Like a mask being pulled down, her face crumpled into a mask of pure anguish. She rushed to my bedside, throwing her arms around my weak shoulders, letting out a loud, shuddering sob. "Oh, Alina, no, no, God, please no," she cried, her voice cracking with dramatic precision. "Not my sister, take me instead. How can life be so cruel?" Her cheek pressed against mine. Her skin was warm, smooth, and dry. Not a single tear wet my skin. And as she held me in that fierce, suffocating embrace, I felt her fingers against my back. Tapping. Counting down. In that quiet, terrifying moment, lying in a bed that was supposed to be my deathbed, a cold realization settled deep in my stomach. The disease wasn't what was killing me. My sister was. The perfect sister. To understand how I got to that hospital bed, you have to understand who Sarah and I were to the world. Our parents passed away 6 years ago in a sudden highway accident. I was 26, and Sarah was 21. Dad left behind a small commercial bakery that was buried in debt, a modest family house, and a modest life insurance policy. As the older sister, I made a choice the day after the funeral. I put my own dreams on hold. I stepped up. I spent 6 years working 18-hour days. I rebuilt Dad's bakery from the ground up, turning it from a failing local shop into a thriving regional brand with 4 locations across the state. I worked until my hands bled, until my back burned, and until sleep became a luxury I barely remembered. I did it because I promised my mother on her deathbed that I would always take care of Sarah. And Sarah made it very easy to take care of her. Sarah was beautiful, fragile, and soft-spoken. She had golden curls, wide brown eyes, and a voice that made everyone in the room automatically want to protect her. While I was the girl in the flour-stained apron managing payroll and supply chains, Sarah was the princess who took art classes and volunteered at animal shelters. Everyone loved Sarah. "You're so lucky to have such a sweet sister, Alina," people would always tell me. "She adores you." And I believed them. I adored her, too. I gave her everything she asked for. I paid off her college tuition. I bought her a car for her 23rd birthday. When she met Julian, a slick, charming real estate agent with expensive suits and an empty bank account, I even paid for their lavish country club wedding. When my business took off, our family attorney suggested I set up a corporate trust to manage the real estate and the brand rights. I was single, had no children, and worked constantly. So, at Sarah's gentle suggestion, I named her as the sole beneficiary of my trust and estate in the event of my death. "Just in case, Alina," she had murmured tearfully back then, holding my hand in the lawyer's office. "God forbid anything ever happens to you. You're all I have left." I remember smiling, squeezing her hand, and feeling so lucky to have a sister who cared so deeply. 6 months ago, I started feeling tired. Not just regular tired, but a deep, bone-crushing exhaustion that rested in my joints. Then came the nausea. Then the sudden dizzy spells. I went to several doctors, but tests showed nothing conclusive, just elevated liver enzymes and mysterious nerve inflammation. Sarah was right there by my side through it all. She insisted on taking care of me. She moved into my house. She cooked my meals. She brought me my morning tea every single day, smiling softly as she handed me the warm mug. "Drink up, big sister," she would say, smoothing my hair back. "You need your strength." I thought I was being loved. I thought I was being nursed back to health by the person who cared about me most in the world. I didn't know that every mug of tea was an installment on my death sentence. Whispers in the dark. The hospital room was quiet after Dr. Reynolds left. Sarah stayed by my side for another hour, gently holding my hand, dabbing my forehead with a damp cloth, and whispering sweet words of comfort. "Just rest, Alina," she murmured, her voice dripping with artificial tenderness. "Don't worry about the business. Don't worry about the house. Julian and I will take care of everything. You just rest." Around 8 in the evening, my eyes began to feel heavy. The nurse had given me a mild sedative to help with the nerve pain. Sarah kissed my cheek, wrapped me tightly in the blanket, and slipped out of the room, closing the heavy wooden door behind her. Or so she thought. The door didn't click shut completely. It remained open by a fraction of an inch, just enough to let the ambient hallway light slice across the linoleum floor. I was exhausted, but the fear kept me awake. My mind was racing, replaying the way Sarah had counted on her fingers by the window. Was I going crazy? Was the medication making me paranoid? I wanted desperately to believe that I was wrong. I wanted to believe my sister loved me. Then I heard voices outside the door. "Is it done?" It was Julian's voice, sharp, impatient, lowered to an urgent whisper. "Keep your voice down," Sarah replied. Her tone wasn't gentle anymore. It wasn't fragile or sweet. It was cold, sharp, and completely devoid of emotion. "What did Reynolds say?" Julian pressed. "Did he give a timeline?" 72 hours, Sarah whispered. I heard a faint, high-pitched giggle escape her lips. 3 days, Julian, 3 days. "Are you sure? No chance of recovery?" "None," Sarah said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. "The damage is total. The doctor said her organs are shutting down completely. The heavy metal buildup in her system looks just like a rare autoimmune degradation. They aren't looking for foul play because they think she's just naturally sick." My blood ran colder than the IV fluid pumping into my arm. My breath caught in my throat. I pressed my hand against my mouth to stop myself from gasping out loud. "What about the trust?" Julian asked. "Did you talk to the lawyer?" "I called Mr. Vance an hour ago," Sarah replied smoothly. "As soon as the death certificate is signed, the entire estate transitions automatically. The 4 bakery locations, the downtown commercial property, and the $2 million life insurance policy. Everything comes to me. No probate, no delay." "Thank God," Julian sighed, letting out a relieved breath. "We were running out of time with the investors on the waterfront deal. 3 days. We can hold off the bank for 3 days." "I told you my plan would work," Sarah said proudly. "You were worried I couldn't keep up the dosage without her noticing. But Alina is so trusting. She took every cup of tea I gave her like a good little dog." "You're brilliant, baby," Julian murmured. "A true actress." She worked herself to death so I wouldn't have to, Sarah said with a soft, cruel laugh. Now it's finally my turn to live. I lay in that hospital bed, frozen, as their footsteps faded down the hallway. The darkness of the room seemed to stretch and twist around me. The betrayal didn't just break my heart, it shattered every reality I had ever known. The sister I had raised, the girl I had sacrificed my youth to protect, was slowly poisoning me to pay off her husband's bad investments and live in luxury. They were waiting for me to die in 3 days. They thought I was helpless. They thought I was a victim lying in a hospital bed, waiting for the end. But as I stared at the ceiling, feeling the cold rage ignite deep in my chest, the fear vanished. The pain vanished. In its place came a blazing, unstoppable fire. They wanted a 3-day countdown. Fine, I would give them one. But they weren't counting down to my funeral. They were counting down to their own destruction. The secret, Al. I knew I couldn't trust anyone in my immediate circle. I couldn't call the police, yet I had no physical proof, just overheard words that a defense lawyer would easily dismiss as a misunderstood conversation from a dying, hallucinating woman on sedatives. I needed hard, unquestionable evidence, and I needed to survive the next 72 hours. At 2:00 a.m., when the hospital was at its quietest, I pressed the call button. A young night nurse named Maya walked into the room. She was new, quiet, and had always been unusually gentle when checking my vitals over the past week. "Are you in pain, Alina?" Maya asked softly, stepping closer to adjust my blanket. I looked into her eyes. "Maya," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. My life depends on it." Maya paused, her eyes widening. "What's wrong?" "I am being poisoned," I said directly. "My sister and her husband are doing it. They are trying to clear my trust." Maya backed up a step, looking stunned. "Alina, you're under heavy medication. Sometimes the sedatives cause." "Look at me," I commanded softly, taking her hand with whatever strength I had left. "Look at my eyes. I am completely lucid. My sister has been nursing me at home for 6 months. Every time I drank her tea, I got worse. Tonight, I overheard her outside that door talking to her husband about heavy metals and my trust fund." Maya stared at me, processing the words. I could see the battle in her head between hospital policy and human instinct. "Please," I pleaded. "I don't have time. If I take any more medication or food brought from outside, I will be dead in 3 days. I need your help." Maya swallowed hard. She looked at the closed door, then back at me. "What do you need me to do?" "I need a full, independent blood screen done right now," I said. "Not through the main hospital lab where Sarah might have friends or where records can be delayed. I need a private lab toxicological panel, and I need you to secretly switch my IV bags to plain saline and detoxifying fluids." Maya hesitated for a second, then nodded firmly. "My brother works at an independent forensic testing facility in the city. I can get a blood sample to him tonight on my break. If there are heavy metals or toxins, he will find them." "Thank you," I breathed, tears finally stinging my eyes not of sorrow but of gratitude. Within 30 minutes, Maya took 3 vials of my blood and hid them in her bag. She swapped my standard medication IV with a simple saline and vitamin flush, marking the chart as if the standard meds had been administered. For the rest of the night, I lay awake, watching the saline drip drop by drop into my vein. Every drop felt like life flowing back into my body. Every drop was a second stolen back from Sarah's countdown. At 7:00 a.m., Maya slipped back into my room, her face pale. She held a printed sheet of paper in her hand. "The test results came back," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Alina, your blood contains lethal concentrations of thallium. It's an odorless, tasteless heavy metal. It builds up slowly, mimicking a severe autoimmune illness until the organs fail." "Thallium," I repeated. "It takes months of steady, low doses to do this," Maya said, looking horrified. "Whoever gave this to you was systematically destroying your body step by step." I gripped the bedsheet tight. I had my proof. The poison was real, the crime was real. Now, it was time to build the trap. The trap is set. By day 2, the detoxifying fluids had cleared enough brain fog for me to think with terrifying clarity. Physically, I was still frail, but my mind was sharper than it had been in months. When Sarah arrived at 10:00 a.m., carrying a thermos of her special homemade soup, I put on the performance of a lifetime. I lay limp against the pillows, keeping my eyes half-lidded, speaking in slurred, breathless gasps. "Sarah," I groaned weakly, letting my head loll to the side. "It hurts so much." Sarah's face instantly assumed that familiar expression of tragic concern. "Oh, my sweet sister," she cooed, sitting down and opening the thermos. "I brought you some warm soup. You need to keep your strength up." I can't eat," I whimpered, turning my head away slightly. "Just leave it on the table, maybe later." Sarah's eyes flickered with a brief flash of irritation, but she quickly masked it, setting the thermos down right next to my bed. "All right, darling, but try to drink a little bit before it gets cold, okay?" "Sarah," I whispered, reaching out with a trembling hand to grab her sleeve. If anything happens to me, the business, the house, I want you to have it all. You've been so good to me." A genuine, triumphant smile broke through her tragic facade for a split second before she controlled herself. "Don't talk like that, Alina," she said softly, patting my hand. "Just focus on resting. Julian and I are already making sure everything is taken care of." "Thank you," I whispered, closing my eyes as if drifting into unconsciousness. As soon as Sarah left the room to speak with the doctors outside, Maya stepped in, carefully poured the poisoned soup into a sealed specimen container for evidence, and replaced it with identical plain broth from the hospital cafeteria. That afternoon, I made 2 confidential phone calls using a burner phone Maya had bought for me. The first call was to Detective Marcus Vance of the State Police Financial and Homicide Crimes Unit. I provided him with the private toxicology report, the recorded footage from the hospital hallway that Maya had secured, and the sample of the thallium-laced soup. The second call was to my corporate attorney, Mr. Arthur Vance, who, ironical to Sarah's belief, was loyal to me, not her. "Arthur," I said, my voice steady and cold, "I need you to draft an emergency amendment to my trust and will immediately. But do not register it in the public database until Friday morning at precisely 10:00 a.m. "Alina, what is going on?" Arthur asked, shocked by my tone. "Sarah told me yesterday that you were in a coma." "Sarah lied," I said. "She's trying to murder me for the estate. I need you to set a trap. On Friday morning, the day I am supposed to die, I want you to convene a full reading of my estate documents at my home. Tell Sarah and Julian that because of a special emergency clause, the final transfer of all assets must be signed in person at my estate by the sole living heir and witnessed by the board of directors." "They will jump at the chance," Arthur said, catching on quickly. "They'll think they're coming to claim their fortune." "Exactly," I said, a cold smile touching my lips. "They think they are coming to my wake, but they are coming to their own trial." Day 3, the Feast of Vultures. Friday morning arrived, day 3. The rain had cleared, leaving behind a crisp, bitterly cold sun that washed over my family's historic estate on the edge of town. Inside the grand living room, the atmosphere felt almost festive if you didn't know what was happening behind closed doors. Julian had spent the morning packing the hardwood floors, wearing a brand new tailored suit he had bought on credit, already acting like the master of the house. Sarah sat on the velvet sofa, wearing an elegant black designer dress that was far too stylish for someone whose sister was supposedly drawing her final breath in a hospital bed. Sitting across from them were the 4 senior members of my company's board of directors, along with my lawyer, Arthur Vance. 2 local police officers stood near the front entrance, under the guise of providing security for the transfer of a multi-million-dollar estate. Sarah held a handkerchief to her eyes, dabbing at non-existent tears whenever anyone looked at her. "Thank you all for coming on such a difficult day," Sarah said, her voice trembling dramatically. "The hospital called an hour ago. Alina's vital signs dropped to 0. She passed away peacefully in her sleep early this morning." Julian stepped forward, putting a hand on Sarah's shoulder, looking solemnly at the attorney. It's what Alina wanted, Arthur. She suffered so much over the last few months. Now she's at peace. We should move forward with the signing so we can honor her memory and keep the business running smoothly without disruption. Of course, Arthur said calmly, opening his leather briefcase and pulling out a stack of legal documents. We must fulfill Alina's final wishes. According to the original trust document, all real estate, corporate assets, and liquid bank accounts are to be transferred to the primary beneficiary upon confirmation of death. Yes, Sarah breathed, leaning forward, her eyes gleaming with an undeniable, ravenous greed. She reached for the pen resting on the table. I'm ready to sign. Before you sign, Sarah, Arthur said, holding up a finger. There is one final clause in the amended trust agreement that requires a physical witness verification. Verification, Julian frowned, his smooth demeanor slipping slightly. What verification? The hospital confirmed her condition. Not the hospital, Julian, a voice spoke from the hallway. The heavy double doors of the living room swung wide open. The room went dead silent. Sarah's pen froze inches above the paper. Julian turned pale as a sheet, his breath catching violently in his throat. Standing in the doorway, wearing a sharp white suit, fully conscious, flushed with life, and looking directly at them with cold, piercing eyes was me. The unveiling. I stepped into the room slowly, deliberately, letting every heel click on the hardwood floor echo like thunder. Behind me walked Detective Marcus Vance and 3 uniformed officers. Sarah dropped the pen. It rolled across the glass table and clattered onto the floor. Her face lost every drop of color, turning the exact shade of chalk. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked as if she had just seen a ghost walk out of a grave. Alina, Julian stammered, backing up until his spine hit the bookshelf. How? What is this? You were in the ICU. You were dying. I was dying, Julian, I said, my voice ringing clear and strong through the high-ceilinged room. Because for the last 6 months, your wife was putting thallium poison in my morning tea, drop by drop, day by day. That's a lie, Sarah suddenly screamed, jumping up from the sofa, her voice screeching in panic. She's crazy. She's delirious from her illness. Officer, take her back to the hospital. She doesn't know what she's saying. I know exactly what I'm saying, Sarah, I said, stepping right up to her, staring into the eyes of the girl I had raised like a daughter. I know about the thallium. I know about the 3-day countdown you were tapping out on your fingers while standing by my hospital bed. And I know about the $2 million life insurance policy you were planning to use to pay off Julian's failed real estate debts. You have no proof, Julian yelled, his hands shaking violently. This is slander. You can't accuse us of this. Detective Vance stepped forward, pulling a heavy plastic evidence bag from his coat pocket. Inside was the thermos of soup Sarah had brought to my hospital room, along with a stack of forensic lab reports. We have plenty of proof, Mr. Miller, Detective Vance said coldly. We have the toxicology reports from an independent lab confirming lethal levels of thallium in Alina's system. We have the chemical analysis of the soup your wife delivered to her hospital room yesterday. And we have a search warrant that was executed at your residence 2 hours ago. Detective Vance held up a second evidence bag. Inside was a small, brown glass bottle retrieved from the back of Sarah's vanity mirror. We found the remaining liquid thallium in your bathroom, Mrs. Miller, the detective added. Your fingerprints are all over the bottle. Sarah slumped back onto the sofa, her knees giving out completely. Her mask of innocence shattered into millions of pathetic pieces. She looked at me, her eyes wide with terror, the greed that had fueled her for months instantly evaporating into desperate panic. Alina, please, Sarah sobbed, reaching out to grasp the hem of my pants. Please, Alina, it was Julian. He made me do it. He convinced me we needed the money. I didn't want to hurt you, I swear. I'm your sister. You raised me. Julian's head snapped toward her in utter disbelief. What? You lying snake. It was your idea from the start. You were the one who bought the bottle online. Shut up, just shut up, Sarah shrieked, turning on her husband like a cornered animal. I looked down at the two of them writhing, screaming, turning on each other like rats in a trap. The people who had pretended to love me, who had watched me grow weaker every day, who had silently celebrated every labored breath I took. "You counted down my days, Sarah," I said softly, my voice dropping to an icy whisper that cut through her screams. "Now let me count down yours." Detective Vance stepped in. "Sarah Miller, Julian Miller, you are under arrest for attempted first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and corporate fraud." The handcuffs clicked shut with a sharp, final sound. As the officers dragged them toward the door, Sarah looked back at me, tears streaming down her face, begging, weeping, pleading for forgiveness. But I didn't look away. I stood tall, holding my head high, watching them get hauled out into the cold morning light. The aftermath and lesson. The months that followed were long and arduous, but justice moved swiftly. With the overwhelming evidence provided by the independent lab, the seized poison, and the recorded hospital hallway conversations, both Sarah and Julian faced the full force of the law. Rather than risk a lengthy trial with a guaranteed life sentence, they both took plea deals. Julian was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, without the possibility of parole for his role in the conspiracy and fraud. Sarah, convicted of attempted premeditated murder, received 35 years. The sweet, fragile younger sister who loved art and animals would spend the best decades of her life behind cold steel bars. After they were sentenced, I walked out of the courthouse into the crisp afternoon air. My body was still healing from the lingering effects of the heavy metals, but my health was returning day by day. The physical poison was out of my blood. And the emotional poison, the illusion of a toxic family, was gone forever. I restructured my business, turning over a percentage of the company's profits to establish a non-profit foundation supporting victims of domestic abuse and hidden violence. I also hired Maya, the brave night nurse who saved my life, to head our corporate health and wellness department, ensuring she would never have to work a grueling graveyard shift again. Standing on the steps of the courthouse, looking up at the wide, open sky, I finally understood something vital about life. Blood makes you related, but loyalty, honesty, and genuine love are what make you family. We often blind ourselves to the darkness in those closest to us because we want so badly to believe in their goodness. But real strength isn't about blind trust. It's about having the courage to face the truth, no matter how much it hurts, and choosing to survive. They gave me 3 days to die. Instead, I used those 3 days to claim my life back. Thank you so much for watching today's story on Calm Girl Stories. If this story touched your heart, gave you strength, or reminded you of the power of truth, please take a second to like, share, and subscribe to Calm Girl Stories. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss another dramatic, inspiring narrative. Leave your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. I read every single one. This story is inspired by real experiences. We believe that every story carries a lesson that can bring light to others. To protect everyone's privacy, our editors may change names, locations, and certain details while keeping the heart of the story true. Stay safe, stay strong, and remember, light always reveals the truth in the dark. See you in the next story.